Hello and welcome to episode 4 of this self-hosting series. Today we're going to be talking about how to access your services from outside of your local area network. So as long as you are on your local area network, then you can easily access the services that we've set up so far. So far we have set up Gonic and we have set up DocuWiki. And if you've set up other services yourself, you can see when you're on your LAN, you just type in the IP address of your server and the port that the service is running on, and it pops up. But if you are on your phone and you are on your data plan and you try to do that, it's not going to work. So how can we access these services from outside of our LAN? One way you could do it is by going into your router and setting up a port forward. This is my router here. Every router is going to have a little bit different firmware and interface on it, but this is where I set up my port forwards. Here you can see I have two set up. Both of them, this is the internal IP address of my server. These are the ports that are forwarded from LAN to the internal ports. So basically what happens is if you know what your external IP address is from your ISP and you type that in with the port that Gonic is operating on, and you have a port forward in here to forward it to your server, it's going to work. The issue is you would need to do that with every single service that you have running on your server. So like say for me, I would have to set up a port forward for subplayer, Sonar Lite, or SAB NZBD, Qubit Jacket. Like every single one of these would have to have um, an instance in this list. You'd have to have a forward. So like this one, if you look down here, it'll give you the link. So that one operates on 4041. So I'd have to put in here 4041, same IP 192.168.1.156, 4041. And I'd have to do that for every single one of these. Now, that's not the main reason why you don't want to do it. The main reason you don't want to do it is because it's a very big security concern to be opening up all these services to the WAN. Somebody just scanning for open ports is going to come across your server that has these open ports or your router that has these open ports pointed to your server. They're going to check all the services that are running. They're going to find a vulnerability and they're going to compromise your server. It's just not possible to make sure all these services are up to date constantly. They're secure. There's no vulnerabilities in them. So it's best to not even put them on the internet or on the WAN and make them available to that side of your network. What is the best way to do it? Well, the best way to do it is by setting up a VPN. And the new hotness is WireGuard. And later in this video, I'm going to walk through setting up WireGuard. But first, we have to go over how are you going to be able to know what your external IP address is? Because most people aren't going to have a static IP address. ISPs generally have an extra charge if you require a static IP address, and for a home setup, it's not worth the extra charge if you want to do a little more configuring and mess around with setting up a dynamic DNS. So up here in these tabs, I have some options available for that. So there are free dynamic DNS services. Like so, just to be upfront, I haven't used. These are the two that I just looked up just by searching. I used to use this one, but I used this one like 10 years ago. So I haven't used it recently, so I'm not recommending these services. I'm just saying they're out there and you can use them if you want. From my understanding, this one's free, but they send you an email once a month and you have to click on a link in the email to renew the service. This one I've never used. I have no idea. It comes looks like it was recommended on Reddit by a bunch of folks, so take that for what it is. But basically, you just sign up for these services. They give you a domain like this. So like your username or host name .hop2.org, and you can pick different domains here. Basically, this would end up being a subdomain to this domain, and you can pick what domain it is and what your subdomain would be. So that's one option that you can do. Another one is, by just the other option that I'll give you, and this is what I do, is I just bought a cheap domain. So you can get a XYZ domain for as little as $1 for a year. Now, you probably, if you like your domain, you're going to want it longer, and the prices will go up year to year. But just to get your foot in the door and see if you like it, it's $1. So you can buy your own domain, and then what I do is I use nearly free speech as a host. Now there's also a ton of different hosting options out there, and there are also free hosting options. And I mean, I can't get into all those options. This is what I use. I could change at some point. You could also host it yourself, and you're getting into a whole nother can of worms that we'll save for another video. But I use this, and then they have their own, or I use some kind of open source dynamic DNS client to update to using their API. I forget what client I use, but it looks like as I was searching this, other services like Cloudflare also have that same option. So you don't even need to have a host. You could do it for free with Cloudflare. So if you buy the domain, that's all you would have to pay for, and then you could set up Cloudflare to do your dynamic DNS. And in here they give you a few options on how to set the IP. One of them is DD client, which is the one that looked like the best option for me, or what I would recommend. And in here it gives you, it does work with a bunch of other services. So if you bought your domain on Namecheap, you wouldn't even need to use Cloudflare to set it. But if you're going to get into some reverse tunneling and using Cloudflare for other services, you'd still want to set it into Cloudflare. But this is, a DD client, Cloudflare, your own domain. That would be the way I would go, and it would just, like I said, takes a few extra steps to set up. Yeah, here's no IP. This is their client that they use, called Linux DUC, or maybe Duck. And so the client is what you put on your server. It gets your external IP address, and then it uses the services API to update it. So whether that be nearly free speech or no IP or Cloudflare, whatever it may be, it updates the record with your external IP address. So then whenever you type in, say, someday soon .noip.org, it will always get you to your home. So instead of having to remember your external IP, you just type that in no matter where you are on your phone, and it will get you back to your home services. All right, so that is how you access your network, or how you can reach, that's how you can reach your home network from your data plan on your phone or from outside your local area network. But now, how do you actually access these services? Well, the best way is to set up WireGuard, and that's the way to go these days. I mean, that's what I feel like everybody is doing. Another way you can do it, which I have an SSH tunnel just set up as a fallback. I've ran into certain firewalls that do deep packet inspection and block VPN. So in those instances, I use the SSH tunnel as a fallback, and it operates on port 443. So I'm kind of like, hopefully it just looks like SSL to any firewall, and it just allows it to pass through, and then it gets forwarded to the internal port on 22. I rarely use that though. Most of the time on my phone, it's always WireGuard. If I'm on a laptop in a motel, it's always WireGuard. Unless I run into that specific issue. Now, also on my phone, I have it set with a Tasker script. You can look into Tasker if you want, but I have a script on my phone that as soon as I get disconnected from my home Wi-Fi and switch over to data or even some other unknown Wi-Fi, it automatically creates that WireGuard tunnel, that WireGuard connection back to my home. So it's as if I never leave my home network. And it actually works very well. Like if I'm in my house and I start up ultrasonic, which is a Gonic client for streaming music, I can start playing that music and jump on my motorcycle, take off, and when I get far enough out of range from my Wi-Fi, the phone is going to switch from Wi-Fi to data, and then that Tasker script automatically turns the VPN on, and I do not skip in the music, because it's already buffered at a certain point, so it doesn't skip, doesn't lose, it doesn't break up the playback of the music in any way. It's just completely seamless. It works very good. All right, so the next thing we'll do is set up WireGuard. And previously, if you watched those videos, I was setting up my services on the server that I actually use, the Rock Pro 64. Going forward, I'm not going to be doing that. I had just a regular Rock 64 sitting in a drawer that I wasn't using for anything, and it's going to be easier just to set up the services for this video on that instead of kind of getting everything mixed up on the server that I actually use. So I have a Rock 64 newly set up with Open Media Vault 5 on it, and I have Docker installed, and that's pretty much it. So if we take a look, and in the router connected host, we need to get the IP address of that. Looks like it's showing up here. All right, and then we will SSH into that. Oh, caps lock on. All right, so we're SSH'd in. Let's also take a look at the web interface. I might not remember the password I set up here. See if it's the default. No. No. All right, well, I don't remember the password I set up for the web interface. We'll have to deal with that later. But we have access here. We can do everything from the terminal anyways. So now setting up WireGuard. Now you can just install WireGuard directly onto the box. So if you do a sudo apt search WireGuard, it's available. So you can just install it that way, and then you can manually configure it that's the way that I've done it personally. But if you don't want to mess with the configuration yourself, I'm going to be showing you the easier way to do it. And by the way, yeah, this Rock 64, this is an older device. It just takes a lot longer to do stuff compared to the Rock Pro 64. All right, but anyways, we'll go to hub.docker.com and see what we have available for WireGuard images. I already was looking around for the easiest option. Now there is WireGuard packages. Linux server always has really good packages. So usually if I see a Linux server image, that's the way I'm going to go. Then there's these other ones too. And for me, what's important is I need to have ARM architecture. So I would check that box. Now, if you're running on x86 hardware, that's generally any of these are going to work. So this one does support it, and I could use this one there. And this one, it wants quite a lot of different environmental variables and volumes. So as I was looking through these, I found one that's really easy, and its name kind of projects that, WireGuard Easy, or WG-Easy. And it even says the easiest way to run WireGuard VPN and web-based admin UI. And I like this one because it has a very clean, easy web-based admin UI. The one thing I didn't like about it is I didn't see in the UI a way to change like the server options. It looks like you only have access to changing the client options, but some web UIs allow you to change both. It looked like this one didn't, but for the sake of simplicity and easy setup, this is what I'm going to go with. You don't have to go with this one. You can go with any one you want. You can directly install it. You can go about it anyway, but this is one we're going to be using for the video. And let's look and see what we need to do to get this set up. So right here we've already have WireGuard installed. We can skip that. Here we need to configure WireGuard, and we're going to be using Docker Compose down here. So it's going to have us make a directory in our home. Now Open Media Vault 5 doesn't do the symbolic link from the drive to the like shared folder, or that kind of setup where you have the shared folders directory. I kind of like that for organizations. So yeah, you can see I'm tabbing right now. It's not completing anything. If I just ls, there's a shares folder. I think that I set that up though. Let me go into that and take a look. I think I set that up. Yep. So I have already set this up with shares and Docker so that we can I just like it for organization purposes. You can do it however you want, but I'm used to doing it that way from Open Media Vault 3 and 4, and now going into 5. All right, so we're going to cd into this as well, and I probably already have a WireGuard folder. We're going to remove that, and we're going to remake it. All right, so now we have a WireGuard folder. Jeez. With nothing in it. And now we're going to continue with the rest of this. So it's going to have us download the Docker Compose file. It's not letting us. All right, so we need to give ourselves permissions to access this folder. We're gonna oh no. All right, so now we have permission to modify this. And now we can repaste our command, download this, and we're gonna need to edit it. What do we need to edit? So we need to change our host name. So this is where your dynamic DNS comes into play. Whatever your host name is, you need to set that in here, right here. So whatever it is, I'm just gonna do this doesn't exist. I'm just putting in, say if I had one at no IP, that's what I could use. Looks like the other options, you could set a password here, which I would recommend. You could set that to whatever you want. And you could change the port. I want to do that. You could. But for this, I would leave it default. You could change the default address here and allowed IPs. By default, it passes everything through the tunnel, and that's probably what you're going to want. You wouldn't have to. If you only want to be able to access your local services, you could just set this for with your LAN IP and subnet scheme. But then if you're accessing websites or anything else that wouldn't be going over the WireGuard tunnel, and if you put everything over it, it's more secure. So like I said, if I'm on a motel Wi-Fi, I would rather be going through my WireGuard tunnel, even if I'm going accessing, secure sites like Amazon or eBay or whatever I'm looking at. I would still rather be running it through my connection through my home WireGuard. It's just you're better protected. You don't need to worry about man in the middle attacks and all that type of stuff. So I would just leave this commented out so it runs everything through the tunnel. You can also change here your default DNS. So you could do that. It might be a good idea to change that to your router so that you can use the host names that you have set. Oh. And then I also, or like if you have running a Pi-hole that does DNS for you too, you could, which I do, I have both. I can't type and talk at the same time. 192.168.1. So that would be my server. So you could set those. The rest doesn't really need to be changed. There, let's go down here, volume. So it's gonna put the configs in this directory that has this compose file, and default ports. And some dependencies. All right, so we can save this. Not used to nano. Let's see. Let's just try to quit. Save, yes. Okay. Those changes have been saved. and now we can run it. Okay, that's all we need to do. Docker compose up detach. I think we have to sudo that. Let's try. There we go. Now let's see if it's running. And it is. And now we just need to go to our IP address with that port number. So we can do that. 192.168.1.240, I believe it was. 51821. We'll see if it's... Oh, fail. Is that the right IP? No, 208. There we go. So we're logged in, and here we go. Our simple WireGuard interface, and really easy to make a new client. You can name it whatever device you're going to be using it on. That's what I would do, like a client for each device. So like laptop, phone, tablet, whatever. So Tony phone, and then all you need to do is download the WireGuard client on your phone. And let me pick up my phone right now. Take a look at it. So you open up WireGuard, you hit the plus button on it, and then you have an option to scan QR code. And so you can just scan this, and it's as simple as that. You'll have a connection back to your LAN when you have that enabled. You can create as many clients as you want. This is as easy as doing this. And then like for a laptop, you likely wouldn't be scanning a QR code, but instead you would download the config and then get it onto your laptop, either by emailing it or putting on a USB stick, putting on your laptop, any way you want, through Nextcloud, any way. You use your imagination on how you get it over there, but you just put that on there. You could open up, well, this is on Linux, so you could use your network manager down here and then go add WireGuard, create. Well, through here, I don't think you can add the file. You'd have to manually set what's in the file, which you could do. There is a way to do it from that terminal where you can add that config into Linux, and I forget what the command was. We could Google it, but I'll let you do that because I'm assuming most people use Windows, and there's a Windows WireGuard client. So I mean, if you just search for WireGuard, and it's really easy, you can just import it through there. You can see all the different platforms that WireGuard runs on. Windows, download Windows installer. Just install it. This is all the documentation on WireGuard if you want to set it up manually. But if you don't want to mess around with that, easiest way is through a Docker container. And as you could see, setting up this one here specifically is extremely easy to do. And then you'll have access to all your home services as long as you are connected to your WireGuard tunnel. Oh, well, the one thing you still need to do after you set up your WireGuard is go into here and set up a port forward. So you'd set your, a port forward for WireGuard from port 51820 to port 51820 to the IP address of your server. So this is the server that I actually use, but if I wanted to use this instance, I could just change this to 208, and then I would be using this one. So that's how you set up WireGuard, and so that you can access all your services. So as I said, you can either set up a bunch of port forwards to each individual service. You don't want to do that because it's a very big security concern, and in my opinion, it's just a matter of time before one of those services gets compromised. WireGuard is a secure protocol. It's specifically meant to access services securely. So you just set that up. You only have one port, one service that you need to worry about, and that gives you access to all your other services. So that's the way to go. Now, if you have a requirement to host a service to the public, say if you wanted to host a website and let your friends access the website, then you need to open up that port, that specific port, because you're not going to give all your friends, you're not going to be able to. You could give all your friends a WireGuard account, but you don't want to do that, and the public, definitely you're not going to be able to make that work with. So if you need to have a service that is facing the public, there's a couple options. One, you could create a reverse tunnel to Cloudflare, and then block everything except the Cloudflare IP addresses. That's the way that I was under the impression was the most secure way to do it, until just recently I learned that about Argo tunnels or Cloudflare tunnels. So that apparently is the most secure way to do it. I don't host anything that is public facing, so I've not messed around with it, but I think once we get through some of these other services and what they can do, and we get more comfortable with setting this stuff up, we'll go into more advanced situations like that, and we'll start setting up like a public facing website with an Argo tunnel, and we'll do it both ways. Although the Argo tunnel, the Cloudflare tunnel, is the most secure way to do it, and it's also free. So you can securely host your own website for no cost other than your internet connection and the power it takes to run the server. Alright, well, that does it for this video. I hope you enjoyed or learned something, and I will see you in the next video.